News when you want it with Bloomberg News Now. I'm Amy Morris. There's your closing bell for this Thursday on Wall Street, where stocks fell as Meta shares sank throughout the trading day. And a trade truce between the U.S. and China didn't make much of an impact on Wall Street because it was seen as mostly baked in anyway. We bring you the closing numbers each day here at Bloomberg. The S&P 500 losing 68 points. NASDAQ down 377 points. The Dow lost 110 points. The 10-year Treasury yield at 4.08% and the 2-year yield at 3.6%. Amazon sales and profit beat estimates. Shares jumped 11% after the closing bell. NVIDIA plans to invest as much as $1 billion in the AI company Poolside, part of a deal that would quadruple Poolside's valuation. Poolside is in discussions to raise $2 billion at a $12 billion valuation and has already secured more than $1 billion in commitments for the latest funding round. And we turn now to the government shutdown, which is now 30 days long. Vice President J.D. Vance hosted a roundtable with aviation industry leaders at the White House to talk about the impact of the shutdown. And after that meeting, he talked about next steps.
Every partisan dispute, every policy disagreement, all of these things we can talk about, we can reason through, we can disagree, we can shake hands and compromise on some of those issues, hopefully. But this is something that every single American, Democrat or Republican or Independent, should be able to agree on. Open the government.
A ground stop at Reagan National Airport is the latest consequence of the government shutdown. Democratic Congressman Jake Auchincloss was on balance of power.
They're working without being paid. Contrast that with Speaker Johnson, who's being paid without working, allowing Congress to vote on the tariffs, which have been the biggest tax hike in modern American history and that were imposed unilaterally and illegally by the president, is not exactly a lefty talking point.
House Speaker Mike Johnson says informal working groups are going on right now to find a path toward reopening the government. Meta shares fell about 11% in regular trading, in part because investors are not convinced Meta will see a return on its investment in AI. Goldman Sachs chair and CEO David Solomon says the odds of a U.S. recession are low, in part because of the tech boom surrounding AI.
I think the economy is in pretty good shape at the moment, and I think when you look at kind of the give-gets, in terms of tailwinds and headwinds, there are more tailwinds at the moment. I mean, I go back, we're still running a pretty aggressive fiscal play. The AI infrastructure investment boom, you've got 6 or 7 large companies that are going to spend $350 billion, this year on AI infrastructure. That has an effect on growth.
Goldman Sachs chair and CEO David Solomon during an interview with David Rubenstein at the Economic Club of Washington, D.C. for the David Rubenstein Show, peer-to-peer conversations. Cigna Group CEO David Cordani told investors the company expected pressure in its pharmacy benefit segment as it makes concessions to hold on to big clients and phase out some drug rebates. Cigna shares fell as much as 12% at the market open, but Cigna sank about 16% during the regular trading day. Former Treasury Secretary Lawrence Summers says it's good news that U.S.-China trade talks never really got out of hand.
I think the most important thing is what didn't happen. This situation didn't spiral out of control into massive confrontation and economic conflict. And it was managed in a way that avoided what potentially could have been very unfortunate and destabilizing outcomes.
Bloomberg contributor Larry Summers speaking with Wall Street Week host David Weston. Subscribe to the Wall Street Week podcast to hear that entire conversation. Buckingham Palace says King Charles III is stripping his brother, Prince Andrew, of his remaining titles and evicting him from his royal residence. In a statement, the palace said Andrew will be known as Andrew Mountbatten Windsor and not as a prince. The move follows revelations about Andrew's relationship with convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. That's news when you want it with Bloomberg News Now. I'm Amy Morris. This is Bloomberg.